My name is Ryan O'Connell and welcome to this training video series, Getting Started with the CLI. In this training lesson we're going to do an overview of the CLI, we'll create some resources in the CLI, and we will clean up our resources. What is the Azure CLI? The Azure Command Line Interface, or Azure CLI, is a set of commands used to create and manage Azure resources. The Azure CLI is available across Azure services and is designed to get you working quickly with Azure. It's built directly into the portal. It's cross-platform. This means it'll run on Windows, Mac OS, and Linux. Woohoo! The advantages of CLI: simple start. Getting started with Azure CLI is easy as a few steps. It's cross-platform support. Uses Azure CLI on many platforms, or almost all. Again, Linux, Mac, and Windows. It's stable. Commands change very rarely. It's great for automation. You can script commands and run them on schedules or as triggers. The Azure CLI versus the GUI. The CLI has fewer resources are needed to run it, fewer changes over time. It's familiar user interaction, where with the GUI it's resource intensive, frequent changes. Who moved my cheese? Where's my stuff? Where did this go? And of course the user interaction is at the mercy of the developer or the designer of the GUI, and they can change the application or interface as and when they feel like they need to. Again, working with the Azure CLI, it works with Windows, Linux, Mac OS, and of course your favorite browser. The command structure for the CLI is AZ, VM, create, name, resource group, and location. So let's break this down. The AZ command lets Windows know that you are using the CLI. The service command is what service are you after? What do you need? Do you want to create a storage group or a VNet group? Then there's an action. What action do you want to do? Do you want to create, delete, or list, or move? And then there's a parameter. This relates to info that is either mandatory or optional, such as group name and location. And then of course we have the global arguments, which applies to all commands, and these are help, output, and query. Again, AZ group create hyphen name Windows VMS space hyphen location East US. This will create a group called Windows VMS in the location East US. If you want to list all your resources groups, it's just AZ group list. AZ group delete hyphen name Windows VMS. This will delete the group Windows VMS. So it's a really cool command. Again, you can do your outputs into many views, such as table, JSON, and etc. Again, if you wanted to view these outputs, you would type AZ resource list and then hyphen and then output to a table, and that would give you your table view. Again, this command creates a virtual machine. As you can see, it's AVM create. We create a resource group called Windows VMS. We name that Windows virtual machine WinFS01. We are using a Windows 2016 data center image, and of course when we create a Windows virtual machine we need an admin username and password, and as you can see I've used AZ admin as my administrator admin username, and of course the password of p@sswzrd1234. Very secure. No, just kidding. Don't use this password in the real world. Again, this is just because we're in a lab and we're getting our head around getting familiar with the CLI. The CLI also has interactive mode. This is still in preview mode. This mode places you in an interactive shell with auto completion commands, descriptions, and examples. F1 turns the examples on and off. F2, you can display the parameter defaults. You can turn those on or off. And of course, F3 toggles the display of some key gestures. Again, we'll go through a very basic overview of this in our lab. I encourage you to go and have a look at the below documentation at Microsoft. It will really help you with learning more about the Azure CLI. So let's move over and log into the portal and do some basics in the CLI. Hi, as you can see, I've logged into the Azure portal. So let's move over to CloudShell. I'm just going to drag this up so we've got some more real estate. Make sure you are in Bash. This is the CLI for Azure. So I'm going to type AZ help, and this is going to go ahead and list all the Azure help commands that we can use with the Azure CLI. Another thing I could do is I could go ahead and use these commands to help me create a virtual machine. So I'm just going to type in clear, so we've got some real estate, and I'm going to go ahead and type in a command over here. So we'll say AZ, let's have a look. So I'll just grab this command and I'll just paste that in there. So what I can do is I can say AZ storage account help and press enter. Now this will go ahead and tell me the commands that I need to do next. I need to give it a name, and I can work my way through and start creating my accounts. And if you have a look here, you can see we've got some really good examples, like the resource group we want to put it into, or even deleting the account, the name, and of course the resource group that it's in. So I'm just going to go ahead and type in clear as well to clear that. And of course we can go ahead and type in AZ resource list. So I would go and type in AZ resource list and press enter. This will list all of my resources in a JSON format. Now you may find this confusing to read, so what we can do is we can use that arrow key to get back to our previous command, and we type in minus out, and let's output it to a table view and press enter. Now this puts it into a table view, which is a lot easier to read, and we can understand it. Again, we can change that view. For example, I may want it in a YAML view, so I could type in YAML, and that would put it in a YAML view. And if you notice, the YAML view and the JSON view are very similar, but the YAML view is a little bit cleaner. And of course we can always go back to table view and list our resources in our table view. So it's really, really cool. Another thing we could do is we could go ahead and create a resource group from the CLI. So we'll do that now. So I'll just type in clear, and I'll paste my command in. It's AZ group create, the name CLI RG, location East US, and I'll go ahead and press enter. And this will go away and create that resource group for us. We can tell that resource group was created successfully because it says it has succeeded. If I just drag this down and we come into our resource group and I just do a refresh a couple of times, you will see that resource group will show up shortly. And as you can see, it didn't take too long. It's gone ahead and it's created that Windows virtual machine for us in the East US location. It's given us a MAC address. The VM is running. It's given us a private and public IP, and it's put it in that CLI RG resource group. So if I went back into resource groups and just did a refresh and went into that resource group there, you can actually see there is my VM, that WinFS VM that we have created, and it's up and running. And I can go ahead and just stop that VM to make sure, so that VM is stopping, and I can move back into our Azure CLI. Also, if I come to the top here, my notification areas, this just tells me that I'm stopping that VM. So coming back to our CLI, again, we can use that previous command that we did to list our resources. So I can go ahead and press enter, and this will go ahead and list those resources. And as you can see, here's my VM that we just created, and you can see it is in the CLI RG group that we created earlier on. So that's really awesome. So if we wanted to now go ahead and delete those resources we can. So I'm just going to go ahead and type in clear to clean this up, and I will go now and we will delete everything in that resource group. So I would go ahead and same command, excepting instead of create we are going to say delete. So I'm going to copy and paste that command in there. So I'm going to say az group delete the CLI RG group, and that will delete everything in that group, including that virtual machine. So let's go ahead and go back to our resource groups. We can see we've still got that group there. If we click on there, we can see we have a whole lot of resources showing up in that group. So let's go ahead and delete this resource group by pressing enter. So I'll go ahead and press enter, and we will be prompted, do you want to delete that resource group? I'm going to say yes, I want to delete that, and press enter, and that will go away and delete that resource group. Again, that could take anywhere from a couple of seconds to a few minutes, so we'll just hold on while it goes ahead and deletes that resource group for us. As you can see now, that resource group has been deleted, and we can confirm that by moving up and hitting our table output, and you will see now that we no longer see that resource group. So if I drag this down and we just do a refresh a couple of times here, you will notice that resource group has now been deleted. Another cool feature with the CLI is interactive mode. So I will just give you a preview of that. So we say AZ interactive and press enter. This will put us in interactive mode, and once we're in interactive mode, we can do a lot of things. This is still in preview, so there are still some things that work with it and some things that don't. So I'm going to go ahead and press enter a couple of times on my keyboard, and I would type in VE for version, VM or VR for version, and then I would go space, and then I would say hyphen, and then I would scroll down and say output, and then I would go space, and I say I want to output that into a table view. This is really good for learning. I can press enter, and this will give me the version of the CLI I am using. So this gives you a real basic overview to get you started working with the Azure CLI, as well as a very brief introduction to the Azure CLI interactive mode as well. Again, if I had to type in here group, I could go in there, and moving over I can do a deployment. So there's a lot of things you can do with working within the Azure interactive mode. It's a good learning tool, but it's still in development mode, and this interactive mode also works with PowerShell as well. So it's a really great tool to get you up and running. So I'd like to thank you for viewing and taking the time to go through this video, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video.